The truth hit like a physical blow the night Vanessa's words shattered everything I'd believed about our family. She'd held onto this secret for 18 years, wielding it like a weapon when cornered. My name is Levi Hartman, and I'm 40 years old. Each morning I run my contracting business from the home office I built with my own hands, the same office where I used to help my son Cameron with his geometry homework. Standing in our kitchen that night, my son Cameron's footsteps on the stairs falling silent as Vanessa's confession hung in the air. I watched our comfortable life dissolve. No more shared dinners where my wife Vanessa hummed while cooking, or weekend projects with Cameron in the garage. My attorney Maeve Ortiz warned me that revenge breeds chaos. Instead, I chose precision, documentation, evidence. The truth would be enough. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I stood in my kitchen at 7:40 that evening, watching Vanessa slam the junk drawer shut. We'd been arguing about Cameron's college plans. I wanted him to consider trade school, but she insisted on an expensive private university we couldn't afford. "He's not even yours, Levi," she spat. The words hung there like smoke. Behind me, I heard Cameron's footsteps freeze on the last stair. My hands gripped the counter's edge, knuckles white against the granite I'd installed 3 summers ago. "What did you just say?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Vanessa's face drained of color as she realized Cameron was there. I was just angry. I didn't mean..." "What does that mean, Mom?" Cameron's question cut through her stammering. She pressed her hands against her face. "I was drunk. I don't know what I'm saying. Please, let's just..." "No." I kept my breathing even, the way I do when lifting heavy beams. "We're getting this sorted. Tomorrow morning, Cameron and I are getting a DNA test. Levi, please." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "I love you both so much. Don't do this." While she pleaded, I pulled my phone out and texted Cameron the address of a testing lab I'd looked up months ago. Yes, I'd had suspicions. Little comments she'd made when drinking, the way she'd get defensive about certain dates. I just hadn't wanted to face them. Cameron's phone buzzed. He checked it, then nodded once, his jaw set. I turned to the drawer Vanessa had slammed, the one where we kept odds and ends. Started pulling out old receipts, mostly from bars, dated around the time Cameron would have been conceived. Vanessa had always been careless about keeping evidence. "What are you doing?" Her voice cracked. "Building a timeline." I sorted the papers methodically. "Every secret leaves a trail, Vanessa." She kept talking, about love, about family, about mistakes. I tuned her out, focused on organizing the receipts by date. Behind me, Cameron stood silent, watching us both. At 9:10, he finally spoke. "I'm going to my room." His footsteps were heavy on the stairs, each one an accusation. I gathered the receipts into a manila envelope and headed upstairs myself. The guest room hadn't been used in months. We talked about converting it to a home office. Now I stripped the bed mechanically, remade it with fresh sheets from the linen closet. The familiar motions helped steady my hands. At 9:32, I clicked off the hallway light. A moment later, I heard Cameron's door open and close, checking to make sure I was still there, maybe, or making sure his mother wasn't coming up. Tomorrow's test would give us an answer, but would it just confirm the lie or reveal an even deeper betrayal? I parked my work truck outside the lab at 8:05 the next morning. Cameron sat beside me, sipping water from the lobby vending machine. He'd barely spoken during the drive, just kept working his jaw like he was preparing for the cheek swab. The lab's fluorescent lights made everything feel stark and clinical. Vanessa had followed us in her car, and now she perched on the edge of a lobby chair, wringing her hands. "I was just drunk," she kept saying as I filled out the consent forms. I didn't know what I was saying. "Please, can't we just go home?" My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, my site foreman, with Maeve Ortiz's number. "Best family lawyer I know," his message read. "Handled my brother's mess last year." I saved the contact but didn't respond. That call could wait until we had proof. The lab tech called us back one at a time, quick, painless cheek swabs. Cameron went first, his shoulders square and determined. I followed, then we both watched Vanessa trembling through her sample. The tech promised results in 3 to 5 days. By 10:15, we were driving home through quiet suburban streets. Saturday morning joggers and dog walkers dotted the sidewalks, living their normal lives while ours hung suspended. Vanessa followed a few car lengths behind, like she wasn't sure she still belonged with us. I started scrambling eggs around 11:30. Cooking had always been my way of holding things together. Cameron sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through school emails on his phone, probably grateful for the distraction. Vanessa hovered in the doorway. "I need you both to understand something," she said, her voice shaky. "Whatever happened back then, I chose you, Levi. I chose our family." The spatula scraped against the pan as I turned the eggs. "Choice means being honest," I said without looking at her. "You chose to lie. Every day for 18 years. I pulled out my spiral notebook, the one labeled receipts that I used for job estimates, and wrote down the lab receipt details. Date, time, cost, payment method. Evidence had weight. Tom's brother had learned that from Maeve Ortiz, and now I would too. Cameron watched me write, then pushed his phone away. "I'm not hungry," he said quietly. "Think I'll go work on that history paper." The eggs were getting cold. I covered them with a plate and kept writing, noting Vanessa's exact words from last night, the timestamps, the way she'd changed her story. Each detail felt like another brick in a wall between what I'd thought was true and what actually was. At 11:58, I closed the notebook. The house had gone quiet except for the hum of Cameron's computer through his bedroom door. 3 to 5 days suddenly felt like forever. I wondered if my patience would hold out that long, or if the waiting would crack me open first. "I chose you," Vanessa had said. But she'd chosen herself first, hadn't she? Chosen her comfort over our truth. Now we all had to live with that choice, at least until the results came back. Tuesday morning hit me like a challenge. I started early, needing to keep my hands busy while we waited for those test results. The basement had been calling for a cleanup anyway. Boxes of Cameron's old school projects, holiday decorations, and all the accumulated stuff of 18 years together. At 7:10, I was organizing the metal shelves when I found it. A banker's box wrapped in clear packing tape, tucked behind some old paint cans. Vanessa's handwriting marked the side. Important, keep. My contractor's knife made quick work of the tape. Inside, I found journals, bank statements, all dating back to when Cameron was born. The kind of paper trail that tells its own story, if you know how to read it. My chest tightened as I flipped through statement after statement. Small transfers, maybe $200 each month, moving into an account labeled rainy day. Not our joint savings, something separate, something hidden. Cameron's footsteps creaked on the stairs at 7:45. He settled beside me on the concrete floor, our shoulders almost touching as we began documenting everything. "Look at the dates," he said, pointing to a journal entry. "This one's from right after I was born." We worked in silence, photographing each page with my phone's timestamp feature. Created a shared folder called Evidence and uploaded everything. The routine of it, snap, save, repeat, helped keep my hands steady while my mind raced. The morning disappeared into paper and pixels. By early afternoon, we had proof of nearly 2 decades of secret saving. A safety net she'd built while telling me we were in this together. At 2:20, I found Vanessa in the living room, folding laundry like it was any other Tuesday. The sight of such normal domesticity made my jaw clench. "Want to explain the rainy day account?" I asked, holding up my phone with one of the statements displayed. She dropped the shirt she was folding. "You went through my private things?" "Private? Like that night at the bar?" The words tasted bitter. "The one you never told me about?" "It was before we were serious," she said, her voice rising. "One night, one mistake with someone whose name I never even knew. Why should biology matter more than 18 years of family?" "It's not about biology," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's about honesty. You've been planning your escape route since the beginning." She started to speak, but I cut her off. "I'm calling Maeve Ortiz. Today." "A lawyer?" Her laugh sounded hollow. "Really, Levi? Really?" I checked my watch, 4:05, stepped into the kitchen and dialed the number Tom had sent. Maeve's office got me in for first thing tomorrow. When I told Cameron about the appointment, he just nodded. We both knew what this meant. A new kind of fight was starting. That night I lay in the guest room bed staring at the ceiling. The clock read 11:07. Somewhere in this house, Vanessa had access to that rainy day account. 18 years of secret saving that could disappear with a few clicks. Would Maeve be able to freeze those assets before Vanessa drained them dry? Maeve Ortiz's office felt like a war room at 9 Wednesday morning. Her desk was clear except for a yellow legal pad and the folder I'd brought containing our evidence. The morning sun caught the silver in her dark hair, pulled back in a precise bun that matched her no-nonsense demeanor. "First," she said, tapping her pen against the pad, "we freeze every joint account and credit card. Then we document the dissipation of marital assets. That rainy day account you found? That's our leverage." I remembered countless dinners where Vanessa claimed we couldn't afford a family vacation while she was secretly building her escape fund. My hands curled into fists on the armrests. "What about living arrangements?" Cameron asked from the chair beside me. The question hit me hard. My son shouldn't have to worry about where he'd sleep next week. Maeve's eyes softened slightly. "We'll file for a protective separation. It gives structure to the split while we prepare for divorce proceedings." She glanced at her watch. 9:40. "Levi, I need your signature on these initial filings." As I signed, Cameron leaned forward. "I want to be at every meeting." His voice carried the same quiet determination I'd heard when we'd gone for the DNA test. "Of course," Maeve agreed, sorting the papers into her system. The rest of the morning blurred into action. By 12:15, Vanessa had been served. I was in the garage when I heard her screams from inside the house. "How could you do this to us?" Her voice cracked between sobs. "I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything." Then, switching instantly, "You're trying to destroy me." I kept working on organizing tools while she cycled through her performance. At 2:30, I filed for divorce. The line was drawn. No going back. That evening, Cameron found the first bottles. "Behind the tide in the laundry room," he texted me at 8:50. 3 empty vodkas, started time-stamping photos. The drinking wasn't new. I'd smelled it on her breath lately. But the evidence was mounting, and Cameron was determined to document everything. Thursday morning, we hit the bank early. The safe deposit box attendant walked us to the vault at 10:05. I placed the original journals, statements, and photos inside, while Cameron kept our duplicates in his backpack. Each piece of paper felt heavy with betrayal. The vault door closed with a solid click at 10:14. Standing there with Cameron, watching the attendant turn her key, I couldn't help wondering if Vanessa's spiral into the bottle would become her weapon in court before those DNA results arrived. Looking at Cameron's reflection in the polished vault door, I saw the same question in his eyes. We'd secured the evidence, but Vanessa's unraveling was just beginning. The taste of that morning's coffee turned bitter in my mouth as we walked back through the bank's marble lobby. Every step echoed with the weight of what we'd locked away. Not just papers, but the last remnants of trust. The DNA results arrived with a quiet ping at 8:02 Friday morning. I stared at my phone screen, the lab's logo crisp against the white background. Cameron stood at my shoulder as I opened the attachment. "Excluded," I read aloud. The clinical term for "not the father" felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language. Cameron just nodded, shoulders straight. "I already knew who I am." His voice carried no trace of doubt, and something in my chest both ached and swelled with pride. The morning peace shattered at 9:30 when Vanessa burst through the front door. Her mascara was smeared, and she reeked of alcohol despite the early hour. "You can't just throw everything away," she screamed, waving her phone with the forwarded results. "One stupid night shouldn't erase 18 years. I kept my voice steady, remembering Maeve's advice about staying calm. "You erased those years yourself, one lie at a time." By noon, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Maeve. Vanessa had filed for a temporary protective order, claiming I'd become violent after reading the results. She cited a broken lamp from last week and showed photos of a bruise I'd never seen before. The sheriff arrived at 4 with the interim order. I handed over my house keys without argument. Fighting would only make things worse. The deputy looked uncomfortable, probably seeing the truth in my controlled response versus the wild claims in the paperwork. Standing in the driveway, watching Cameron pack his duffel bag into my truck, I remembered something. "Your dash cam," I said. From that fender bender last month. Was it still recording the night that lamp broke? Cameron's eyes lit up. We'd installed the camera after a minor accident, leaving it running to catch any future problems. At 7:25 that evening, huddled over his laptop in our temporary rental's living room, we found what we needed. The audio was clear, Vanessa's voice rising in frustration at a telemarketer, the crash of the lamp, and then, most damning of all, her muttered words. Maybe this will make Levi listen. My hands shook slightly as I typed the email to Maeve at 7:41, attaching the audio file. The subject line read, "Evidence of false TPO claims." The timestamp would be impossible for Vanessa to explain away. I glanced at Cameron, who was already organizing our few belongings in the sparse rental space. He'd followed me without hesitation, choosing truth over comfort. The hearing was set for Monday morning, and that audio would either free us from Vanessa's latest manipulation or leave us in this limbo while the case dragged on. The rental's unfamiliar walls pressed in as I hit send on the email. Would Monday's judge see through Vanessa's desperate grab for control before this temporary order had a chance to become something more permanent? I checked my watch as Cameron and I climbed the courthouse steps at 8:55 Monday morning. The familiar weight of my work boots felt wrong against the polished marble floors, but they were part of who I was. A contractor, not some smooth talker in expensive shoes. Maeve stood at the counsel table arranging papers with precise movements. Her dark suit and low bun radiated competence. She gave us a slight nod as we took our seats. Across the aisle, Vanessa sat with folded arms, her chestnut hair unwashed and her eyes bloodshot. The smell of stale alcohol drifted our way. I remembered countless morning coffees across our kitchen table, Vanessa humming while she fixed breakfast. Amazing how memories could turn bitter so fast. "All rise," the bailiff called at 9:15. The judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, took her seat and reviewed the file. At 9:20, Maeve played the dashcam recording. Vanessa's voice filled the courtroom, first arguing with the telemarketer, then the distinct crash of the lamp. Her muttered threat about making Levi listen landed like a hammer blow. I watched Vanessa's face drain of color. "Your Honor," Vanessa's attorney started, but the judge held up one hand. "Mrs. Hartman," she said at 9:50, "this recording is dated well before your protective order claim. Would you care to explain why you presented that broken lamp as evidence of recent violence?" Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. No lies came out. "The temporary protective order is denied," the judge continued. "Mr. Hartman will resume possession of the marital home immediately." "And Ms. Hartman?" She fixed Vanessa with a stern look. "This court takes a very dim view of manufactured evidence." The drive home at 11:10 felt surreal. Cameron sat beside me in comfortable silence, both of us processing the morning's victory. When I unlocked the front door, stale air hit us like a wall. Cameron moved through the house, throwing open windows while I surveyed the damage. Empty wine bottles lined the kitchen counter. Takeout containers filled the sink. The house I'd maintained for 18 years looked like a college dorm after finals week. "Want help cleaning?" Cameron asked, but I shook my head. "Let's just air it out for now. We'll tackle it tomorrow." Vanessa arrived at 2 hour with a single rolling suitcase. She wouldn't meet our eyes as she packed clothes and toiletries. The bottles in her trunk clinked as she loaded her bag. My phone buzzed at 11:18 that night. Vanessa's text read, "I just need help. Please. You don't understand how hard this is." More bottles clinked in the background of her voice message that followed. I hit silence at 11:20, set the phone face down, and stared at my bedroom ceiling. The same ceiling I'd looked at for 18 years, now feeling miles higher above me. Would Vanessa's drinking derail our chances at a clean settlement, or would it accelerate her final collapse? The question hung in the dark room like smoke. The deposition room felt too small at 10 a.m. that Thursday, even with just 5 of us there. I sat beside Maeve, my work-roughened hands folded on the polished conference table while Cameron chose the chair furthest from Vanessa. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her stenotype machine. "Please state your name for the record," Maeve began, her tone professionally neutral. "Vanessa Marie Hartman." Her voice cracked slightly. She wore a navy blazer I didn't recognize, probably bought with the money she'd hidden away all these years. I remembered the Christmas morning when Cameron was 7, and Vanessa had claimed we couldn't afford the bike he wanted. Now I knew where that money had really gone. "Ms. Hartman, can you explain the account labeled Rainy Day at First National?" Maeve's question cut through my thoughts. Vanessa shifted in her chair. "It was for emergencies. Any responsible mother would save for emergencies." "I see." Maeve lifted a stack of papers. "Would you characterize these purchases as emergencies?" She slid documents across the table. A Coach handbag for $825, weekly appointments at Serenity Day Spa averaging $200 each, a weekend yoga retreat for $2,500. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched Vanessa's fingers curl around her water glass. I was under a lot of stress." Her eyes darted toward Cameron, but he kept his gaze steady on the wall behind her. At 11:15, Maeve turned to the DNA results. My chest tightened, but I felt a surge of pride watching Cameron. He sat perfectly still, his face a mask of calm as Vanessa finally spoke the full truth about that night 18 years ago. "It was just once, at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street. Vanessa's words tumbled out. "I didn't know his name. He didn't know mine. We were both drunk and I never saw him again. And you chose to conceal this from your husband for 18 years? Maeve's pen tapped quietly against her legal pad. "I thought it would hurt less than the truth." Vanessa's voice had grown small. "I chose Levi. I chose our family." "No," I heard myself say. "You chose lies." The rest of the deposition passed in a blur of financial records and timeline confirmations. By early afternoon, Maeve had scheduled a settlement conference for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. I spent the weekend trying to keep busy. Cameron helped me paint his room the sky gray he'd picked out, both of us working in comfortable silence, broken only by the scrape of rollers against walls. Each evening, I spoke with Maeve by phone, reviewing negotiation strategies and acceptable settlement ranges. Standing at the conference room door Tuesday at 1:58 p.m., I straightened my tie, the one Cameron had given me last Father's Day. My hand rested on the door handle while I wondered if Vanessa would finally accept reality or if she had one last scorched earth tactic waiting to ignite. I took my seat at 2:02 p.m., straightening the stack of documents in front of me. The conference room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead while Maeve pulled out a leather portfolio and extracted the settlement proposal we'd carefully crafted. "Here are the terms," Maeve said, sliding copies across the polished table. "Mr. Hartman retains the marital home. The documented dissipation from the hidden account will be credited against Mrs. Hartman's share of marital assets. Neither party will pay spousal support." Vanessa's attorney leaned in, whispering something in her ear. The ticking of the wall clock seemed unnaturally loud. At 2:07 p.m., Vanessa's voice cracked. 18 years. We were together 18 years, and you want to leave me with nothing?" My jaw tightened, but Maeve spoke before I could. "Your Honor," she addressed the settlement judge, "I'd like to cite Peterson versus Peterson regarding intentional deception and Williams versus Williams on financial misconduct through hidden accounts. The proposed settlement is more than generous given the circumstances." The fluorescent lights caught the shine of sweat on Vanessa's forehead. I remembered teaching Cameron to ride his bike, believing he was my son. All those years of lies pressed against my chest. "The terms appear equitable," the judge noted, reviewing the paperwork. "If presented as a consent judgment, I would approve." Vanessa's hands trembled at 2:19 p.m. as she reached for the pen. The scratch of her signature echoed in the quiet room. Something in my chest loosened. Not relief exactly, but the weight of uncertainty lifting. Friday morning arrived with autumn sunlight streaming through the courthouse windows. At 10:30 a.m., we stood before the judge one final time. The decree felt heavy in my hands, official stamps declaring an end to 18 years of marriage built on deception. Cameron squeezed my shoulder, his presence steady and grounding. The boy, no, the young man, who'd stood beside me through every step of this fight had grown stronger through it all. Later that evening at 6:15 p.m., Cameron surprised me. "I need to talk to Mom," he said quietly. One last time, alone. I watched through the window as he met Vanessa on the front porch. The setting sun cast long shadows across our lawn. The grass needed cutting, I noticed absently. Cameron stood straight-backed, his hands in his pockets as he spoke. Even from inside, I could see Vanessa's shoulders shaking. Their conversation was brief. Cameron's words carried through the screen door with quiet finality. Until you're sober, really sober, don't call, don't text, don't send cards. I won't answer. At 6:22 p.m., he came back inside and closed the door with a soft click. Through the window, I watched Vanessa walk to her car alone, shoulders hunched against the cooling evening air. Cameron's choice to cut contact until she found sobriety hung in the air between us. Would our own chosen paths, his toward independence, mine toward rebuilding, protect the peace we'd fought so hard to win? Could we preserve the bond we'd forged in battle while giving each other space to heal? The questions lingered as Cameron headed upstairs to pack for his weekend shift at the campus bookstore, leaving me alone with the echo of the closing door. Saturday morning, I stood in my kitchen at 8 a.m., breathing in fresh air as I opened every window in the house. The coffee maker gurgled behind me, just 1 cup now, not 2. Sunlight streamed across the counter where I'd placed a blank notepad, pen in hand. At the top, I wrote "Rebuild" in block letters. The list grew slowly. Paint the hallway, replace the worn living room carpet, maybe build that deck I'd been planning for years. Simple tasks that would make this space mine again. The house felt different with just my footsteps echoing through it. Not empty exactly, more like waiting. A clean slate. Sunday afternoon rolled around, and Cameron's text buzzed at 3 p.m. The photo showed a battered wooden desk he'd found at a thrift store, positioned under his apartment window. "First real furniture purchase," he wrote. "Only took 3 tries to get it up the stairs." I smiled, remembering the rickety desk where he'd done his high school homework. This one was all his. Chosen by him, moved by him, paid for with his campus job money. Monday morning, Maeve's email arrived at 9:40 a.m. The subject line read, "Final disbursement confirmation. All accounts settled, all assets divided, all paperwork complete." I printed the documents and filed them in a new fireproof safe labeled "Clean Start" in careful letters. The old life, boxed and archived. Tuesday brought news I hadn't expected. The rehabilitation center called at 11 a.m. to confirm Vanessa's intake. With no house and no savings left, she'd finally admitted she needed help. The intake coordinator's voice was professional, detached. "We'll provide updates if she lists any emergency contacts." I didn't ask if she had. Our new routine fell into place naturally. Every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m., Cameron and I checked in. Simple things. His classes were going well. I'd started that hallway painting project, he'd joined a study group, I was thinking about taking a woodworking class. No drama, no crisis, just father and son sharing their lives. The gratitude in our voices went unspoken but understood. Thursday evening found me on the back steps at 9:05 p.m., looking through the sliding glass doors at my transformed living room. The space felt lighter somehow, cleared of old tensions and secrets. I'd been planning a solo trip to the coast, something I'd always wanted to do but never found time for. Meanwhile, Cameron was deep in midterm preparation, building his own life one test and one thrift store purchase at a time. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Proud of you, son." Simple words for a complex journey. The neighborhood settled into night around me as crickets chirped their evening song. Would tomorrow's sunrise feel like the first real day of the life we'd fought to create? Could peace finally become as ordinary as morning coffee and Wednesday check-ins? I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.